Coming up on Network Africa. Protests persist in Senegal despite the Interior Ministry's call for calm. UK says it will allow regional powers to lead action on Niger Republic, supporting whatever decisions made after last week's coup d'etat. An earthquake with magnitude 5.6 shakes northern Ethiopia and Eritrea. Welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Joke Rogers here in Lagos. We begin in Senegal, where the Interior Ministry says it's taken measures to preserve peace and tranquility as opposition protests are still happening in some parts of the country. Small protests are taking place in the capital Dakar and in Ziguinchor, a city where the opposition leader, Sonko, is the mayor. The latest protest was triggered by the arrest of Mr. Sonko over the weekend and the dissolution of his party. He remains in custody and on Sunday began a hunger strike. On Monday, Interior Minister Antoine Felix Abdoulaye Diome announced that the government had dissolved Mr. Sonko's Patriots of Senegal party for inciting arrests during violent protests last month in Dakar. But PASTEF says the Senegal's stability is now compromised. It's the third time a political party had been banned in the West African nation since it gained its independence from France in 1960. The others happened before multi-party democracy was introduced in the 1970s. And military chiefs from West Africa's regional bloc, ECOWAS, are meeting in the Nigerian capital, Abuja, to discuss the military coup that took place in Niger last week. The bloc previously warned it was giving Niger's new rulers a week to reinstate President Mohamed Bazoum before it considers the use of force. Overnight, the first of 3 French planes sent to evacuate European citizens arrived back in Paris with more than 250 people aboard. The evacuation comes after demonstrators attacked the French embassy on Sunday. Italy has also flown out dozens of its own nationals, as well as other Europeans and American citizens. Meanwhile, the military government has announced the reopening of Niger's borders with Algeria, Burkina Faso, Libya, Mali, and Chad. However, the land border with Nigeria remains closed. The first military planes carrying mostly European nationals evacuated from Niger have landed in Paris and in Rome. France began evacuating its citizens from Niger amid anti-French sentiment following last week's coup. Other countries are expected to fly more of their citizens out of the West African country.
Western countries have been scrambling to extract their citizens after a military junta staged a coup in the West African nation last week. Early on Wednesday morning, 262 evacuees arrived safely in Paris as the first military planes carrying mostly European nationals evacuated from Niger landed. French nationals and citizens of other European countries who arrived Paris said they were relieved to be out of Niger.
Things could have turned ugly, but it still is nice to be back here. We will see how things evolve over there in the coming days and weeks. For us, who care about it quite a lot, we will follow this closely.
France is expected to operate more repatriation flights, even as evacuations continue from Niamey's airport. According to the French Foreign Ministry, French nationals have been advised to go to the international airport. In the meantime, Italy's military aircraft brought in 87 evacuees to Rome, some 36 Italians as well as 21 US citizens. 4 Bulgarians, 2 Austrians and 1 citizen each from Britain, Niger, Hungary, Senegal and Nigeria were on the plane, as well as military personnel. Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani said some Italian civilians had decided to stay in Niger and that the Italian embassy there will remain open. The Charge d'Affaires of the U.S. Embassy in Rome, Sean Crowley, welcomed its citizens, thanking the Italian government for its assistance.
But we would like to thank the government of Italy for everything that they have done. So it's really been fantastic to have the citizens brought to safety. And so now I know that they're looking after the Italian citizens and we're looking after the American citizens. Thank you very much. They are, of course, very tired and they have just left a crisis zone. But they are very happy that the Italian people and the Italian government were able to help them. Thank you so much.
Even as European countries race to get their citizens out of Niger, the U.S. State Department says it has not seen any indication of threats against its citizens or facilities in the coup-hit nation.
A few things. Number one, our embassy is open today, operating on a normal schedule. We're monitoring the efforts by France and other Europeans to evacuate their citizens. We urge Nigerian authorities to facilitate an orderly, safe evacuation. At this time, we do not have indications of threats to U.S. citizens or facilities, but we are continually reevaluating our posture to ensure the safety of our citizens. We have not seen any evidence that Russia was behind this coup, but certainly it would not be out of character for Russia or for the Wagner Group to try to take advantage of instability in this country or any other in Africa.
Niger's military coup has raised fears for the security of the Sahel region.
Meanwhile, the United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel says the unfolding crisis in Niger, if not addressed, will exacerbate the deteriorating security situation in the region. Briefing reporters in New York via video teleconference from Accra, Ghana, the head of DIvoires, Leonardo Santos Simao, said it will also negatively impact the development and lives of the populations in a country where 4.3 million people need humanitarian assistance. According to him, DIvoires is supporting the economic community of West African states, but is not directly engaged in negotiations so far.
People need the unfolding crisis, if not addressed, will exacerbate the deteriorating security situation in the region. It will also negatively impact the development and lives of the populations in a country where 4.3 million people need humanitarian assistance. Niger and the region do not need coups d'etat. We are supporting ECOWAS because our role is precisely that, and but we are not engaged on any negotiations so far. But we are fully supporting all efforts to restore democratic order in that country. The decision of use force if necessary, it's not a UN decision. It's a ECOWAS decision. But what we value and we support more is that all means to find a peaceful solution for the problem should be used. But recognize also that ECOWAS has the right to take other measures if they feel fit. Well, my concern is that if measures are not taken or the situation is not reversed, it's very likely that the spread of terrorism in the region can increase. Last ordinary summit in Bissau, the decision was twofold. One, that the region, ECOWAS, has to assist those countries in transition, namely Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso, to complete the process of transition through elections. Second, not accept coup d'etat anymore.
Meanwhile, the Niger Electricity Company Nigelec says Nigeria has cut off supply of electricity to the country. This is part of sanctions imposed by the West African bloc ECOWAS over last week's coup. There are rolling blackouts in the capital Niamey as well as other major cities of Maradi and Zinda. People have power supplies for about an hour at a time, and then the power goes off for 4 or 5 hours. Nigeria is the major supplier of electricity to Niger Republic. In the meantime, the UK government is putting its support solidly behind ECOWAS and its response to the coup in Niger. Foreign Secretary James Cleverley, who was in Lagos, Nigeria on Tuesday, said the UK will allow regional powers to lead action on Niger and will support whatever decisions are made in that light.
When it comes to Niger, the UK, was very, very pleased to see regional African leaders take fast and decisive action and communicate their intentions, because I think that the message that sends about African leaders being engaged and taking responsibility for the actions in their region and their continent is incredibly important. I had a conversation with the Ghanaian president yesterday, and I'll be meeting with President Tinubu tomorrow, where of course I will be discussing what the UK can do to support African initiatives and African actions rather than the UK or other countries trying to push ourselves to the front of this. So it's absolutely right that African institutions, ECOWAS, the AU and African leaders are taking the primary position in response to this situation.
In the meantime, the United Kingdom looks forward to helping Africa achieve her goals of leading on the world stage, becoming a permanent member of the United Nations and achieving political, economic stability and prosperity. This was part of the British Foreign Secretary's foreign policy speech for Africa delivered in Lagos, Nigeria. Our foreign affairs correspondent, Amarachi Ubani, was there and now reports.
Walking gingerly into the room filled with members of Nigeria's business community, media owners and practitioners, and a small group of diplomats, the British Foreign Secretary James Cleverley quickly establishes his connection with Africa, revealing his mother was Sierra Leonean, and though he does not play favourites with continents, Africa is his best.
But if I did, it would be Africa.
He then delves into reasons why the UK has interest in a continent whose population will reach 2 billion by 2050, half of whom will be under the age of 25.
We want and need better functioning international financial systems. We want and need permanent African representation on the UN Security Council. We want and need the African Union to become a member of the G20, because we want and we need the sheer demographic heft of African countries to be appropriately recognised in international organisations, so that we can shape the future of the world in partnership with African countries.
He spoke about multilateral reforms that will help Africa achieve her goals, including the contributory role of women, which he says drives economic development, before setting out plans for Africa over the next few years.
A real uplift in growth and prosperity cannot come without an increase in international trade. And that's why our developing countries trading scheme will extend tariff cuts to hundreds of more products exported from developing countries in Africa and elsewhere. This means that 98% of goods imported from Africa into the UK will enter duty-free, and new rules of origin will help the least developed economies integrate into global supply chains. Increased trade stimulates partnerships, and our collective power today, the power of African countries and the UK together, is founded on the quality and the number of our partnerships. Only together can we adequately address shared challenges. Only together can we harness opportunities, and only together can we improve living standards.
Mr. Cleverley highlights the importance of both sides, that's Africa and the UK, working together to achieve economic development, especially through the UK-Africa Summit coming up in April next year. Though there are many unpredictable outcomes, such as the war in Ukraine, the coup in Niger, and security on the continent, the UK government, he says, will continue to support already existing projects with partners to accelerate progress towards shared objectives. Amarachi Ubani, Channel Television News.
And when we return on the program, South African fans celebrate first win at the Women's World Cup that takes them to the knockout stages of the tournament. Details of that story and others in a moment. Welcome back to the program. We're still in Nigeria, where members of organized labor have presented their protest letter to the three-man committee set up by the Senate to meet with the protesters who took their grievances to the National Assembly. The leadership of the Senate appointed a team led by the Senate Chief Whip, Senator Ali Ndume, Senator Ireti Kingibe, and Senator Tony Nwoye, who engaged the protesters. Senator Ali Ndume promised to take their demands to President Bola Tinubu. Earlier in the day, organized labor and its affiliate unions began the proposed nationwide mass protest when the NLC President Joe Ajaero leading the rally in the Federal Capital Territory, which kicked off from the Unity Fountain. Rallies and protests also took place across the country in Lagos, Imo State, in Ogun State, Ekiti State, also states in the northern parts of Nigeria. An earthquake with a magnitude of 5.6 hit northern Ethiopia and the neighboring Eritrea on Tuesday evening. Local media reports that it shook several towns in northern Ethiopia's Tigray region, including the capital Mekelle. No deaths or destruction have so far been reported. Senior Tigrayan official Solomon Mesho said all districts near the border with Eritrea felt the tremors, and according to Eritrea's information minister, the epicenter was in the Eritrean town of Erafiali. Extreme heat in North Africa this summer is said to have hit Algeria the hardest, with wildfires spreading in the Maghreb region. Out of all North African countries, Algeria has been suffering the most from extreme weather episodes. Officials say it lost 150,000 hectares of forest land to wildfires during the past 2 years. This summer, it's witnessing an expanded version of the phenomenon, which reached 16 states where 94 areas caught fire simultaneously. In responding to the flaming danger, the Algerian authorities say that it has created a national plan to face major fires, enabling it to engage with the phenomenon efficiently. Tunisia's autocratic president, Kais Saied, has sacked his prime minister, Najla Bouden, the country's first ever female prime minister. She was handpicked by President Saied in 2021 to lead the government after he removed her predecessor and took control of almost all state powers. Her late-night dismissal was followed by the immediate swearing-in of another political unknown, Ahmed Hachani, who previously worked at the Tunisian Central Bank. The move comes during a deepening economic and social crisis that has seen a shortage of many key commodities. Ms. Bouden's government had supported an economic reform program geared towards securing a $2 billion IMF bailout. The former president of Cote d'Ivoire, Henri Konan Bedi, has died at the age of 89. Mr. Bedi took power as the country's second head of state after the death of Félix Boigny in 1993, but allegations of widespread corruption and an economic slump led to him being ousted in a military coup in 1999. He attempted to return to power 3 years ago, but was defeated by his longtime political rival, President Alassane Ouattara. Many Ivorians have been paying tribute to him on social media, mainly, with many saying his death will be felt as a big loss for the entire country. And former South African President Jacob Zuma has returned from Russia, where he has been receiving medical treatment. In a statement, the Jacob G. Zuma Foundation said the checkup and observations went well, and his return from Russia was also necessitated by the private prosecution matter, which will be sitting in Pietermaritzburg High Court this Friday. His trip came after he lost a case last month at the Constitutional Court, where he had tried to overturn a ruling that he must return to prison. The Constitutional Court ruled that Mr. Zuma had been granted medical parole unlawfully. The President's Department has now given the 81-year-old until Friday to submit reasons why he should not serve out the rest of his 15-month sentence. And finally, South Africa's female football team made history by beating Italy to reach the knockout stages of the Women's Football World Cup for the first time ever. After a dramatic match, Banyana emerged victorious over the Blues of Italy with a 3-2 scoreline in Wellington, New Zealand. They become the second African country after Nigeria to qualify for the round of 16. Fans have been celebrating, singing and dancing outside the Wellington Regional Stadium as they look forward to playing the Netherlands in Sydney on Sunday, August the 6th.
Oh yeah, no, we're over the moon. It's amazing for the women.
It's amazing for the women. They've come really, really far. Given everything, yeah, they really deserve this. They played their hearts out tonight.
Very excited. Yeah, so really well done, they say.
Beyond excited about tonight's win. Not only does it mean that we're through to the next round, but I'm also incredibly proud of Banyana and what they represent for our country, which is going to make me cry because it's so beautiful. But South Africa, I love you, and tonight Banyana did us proud. I couldn't be happier.
I mean, first of all, the first goal, the penalty that was given against us, it almost broke us down, but immediately the girls recovered. We had full confidence that they would be able to recover. Then the two goals that came later on was amazing, spectacular, especially the last goal, unbelievable.
I feel great. I think South Africa was going to win originally anyway. They played well, and I think it's the Women's World Cup's better than the men's, I think.
It's a bit gutting. It was good to see us come close. I mean, we came from behind twice, but I guess it just wasn't to be.
Excited fans there. That's our package today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Joker Rogers. Bye for now.